The New York Jets' search for an offensive coordinator is moving quickly. Less than 1 week after firing Tanner Engstrand, the Jets have a list of finalists for the job that they will be speaking to this week. And right here on NY Flight Jets Talk, we break down the finalists for the role. And are any of them really an upgrade over Engstrand? We'll talk about that and much more, all coming up here on a live edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Let's go.
This is NY Flight Jets Talk with Connor Long. NY Flight Jets Talk. We're talking Jets, 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 Jets. NY Flight Jets Talk with special guests. NY Flight Jets Talk. Here's your host, Connor Long. Jets, 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 Jets.
What is going on, New York Jet fans? Hello, everyone. Welcome back here into another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. As always, I am your host, Connor Long, as we come to you guys live right here on this Monday evening, February 2nd, 2026. Thank you all for joining us. Be sure to drop down below, smash that like button, and hit subscribe. That is the free way to support us, what we are doing right here on the channel, bringing you guys near daily New York Jets content all year round. So again, be sure to hit like, be sure to hit subscribe, because that helps the channel grow. It is completely free and lets YouTube know what we're doing over here and continues to pump that content out to even more Jet fans. If you haven't already, follow me on Twitter at Connor_Long15. For people over in the Twitter crowd, if you haven't subscribed to us over on YouTube, be sure to do that at NY Flight Jets Talk on YouTube. It is great to be with you all, however, and wherever you may be joining us right here on this Monday evening, whether you're watching us live, whether you're watching us after the fact. Appreciate you all tuning in. And if you're watching us live, be sure to throw all of your questions, all of your comments, and all of your thoughts in the live chat for us to get to. We want to engage with you guys. We want to hear what you have to say. So we'll be going to the chat, of course, throughout the show, as we always do. And then if you want to call into the show, get your thoughts heard live on screen, you can do so by using the pinned comment in the video description down below. So again, questions, comments, thoughts, throw all of those in the chat. If you want to call into the show, do so with the link pinned at the top of the video description down below. Hit like, hit subscribe, free, and it helps the channel grow. The New York Jets continue their search for an offensive coordinator, and it's moving rather quickly. Last Tuesday, we got the news that Tanner Engstrand and the Jets were ultimately parting ways, and then Wednesday, the Jets announced their list of 5 candidates that they were conducting interviews with, and then now, less than a week later, the Jets have their list of finalists for the role. The 2 confirmed finalists for the Jets offensive coordinator job as of now are Darrell Bevell, who last served as the Miami Dolphins quarterbacks coach, and then Greg Roman, fresh off a 2-year stint as the Los Angeles Chargers offensive coordinator. Now, these are 2 interesting names. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN added that there will be a 3rd finalist for the role who hasn't been named yet. I'll say this right off the dome. I would be very surprised if that 3rd finalist is not Frank Reich. I think it is widely expected that Reich will be the 3rd finalist for this job, and potentially, I mean, right from the start, looked as if he was the favorite, and I think could still remain the favorite right now. I think it's enticing to see the route that the Jets are going. They pivoted off of Engstrand, who was a first-year coordinator who showed a lot of promise despite dealing with a revolving door of quarterbacks, and they've taken the route now of veterans. Greg Roman, Darrell Bevell, Frank Reich, what do they all have in common? They have experience in common. Greg Roman has had 4 stints as an NFL OC. Darrell Bevell has had 4 stints as an NFL OC as well. And then you pair in Frank Reich, 2 stints as an offensive coordinator at the professional level, 2 separate stints as a head coach. The Jets are prioritizing experience in this search, which could be good and bad for any team. And from the Jets' perspective, look, I titled the article that I wrote over at jetsxfactor.com, kind of breaking down breaking down these candidates, dividing them, list 5 through 1, and the title was "Who's the Least Bad?" Because that is kind of the way to describe this offensive coordinator search. None of the names are really intriguing, and when you go down the list, to be quite honest, I would rather have Tanner Engstrand than any of these 5 names who the Jets initially interviewed, and then the 2 projected 3 finalists for the job, the 2 confirmed ones being Bevell and Roman. I'll kind of start with Bevell. He is someone who's had success as an NFL offensive coordinator. There's no doubt about it. He spent 7 years with the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle won a Super Bowl under his watch, made it to another, but this is someone who, again, has had success, but it hasn't been in a little while. He has struggled to find success, frankly, since 2017. That was the last time he oversaw a top 15 offense. The last time he coached a top 10 unit was 2015. And circle back to where his offense ranked top 17th, talking about DVOA. That's the metric that I'm going by making these assessments right here on the show. Last time that he oversaw a top 10 unit, again, 2015. Last time he coached the top 15 unit was 2017. And then 2017, he was fired for his unit's underperformance. And that was the last time one of his offenses was in the top league's top 15 per offensive DVOA. So since then, since his stint with the Seattle Seahawks, which he's most known for, he's had a couple underwhelming runs as the Lions offensive coordinator from 2019 to 2020, and then went one and done as the Jaguars OC in 2021, and then kind of got a role under Mike McDaniel in Miami. The results were inconsistent overall in Miami under McDaniel's tenure, under Bevel's tenure. Bevel, his official title in Miami, was their pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Again, the success there was up and down. They were able to find success at times offensively, but I think a lot of that is attributed to Mike McDaniel. He is the offensive mastermind. He was the head coach of that team for a handful of seasons. He was the one calling the plays. Bevel is just not intriguing to me because, again, this is someone who has not had continued really NFL success in over a decade. The track record with quarterbacks isn't that great. I just don't see the interest. He's failed in his last two stints as an NFL offensive coordinator. Like, why is this guy a finalist? Why? Like, if this is the alternative after firing Tanner Engstrand, you were better off keeping Engstrand. And again, that goes back to my main point. When I look at the list of these 5 candidates, I'd take Engstrand over every single one of them. And to be honest, I think Bevel is the least intriguing finalist for the job. So I had him at 4 on my list of the 5 coordinators that they interviewed, only ahead of, Lunda Wells, who is 42 years old, whose most experience as an NFL coach, is as a tight ends coach. So he's only ahead of Wells on this list. And then just one spot ahead of him is someone who, again, hasn't been officially reported as a finalist for the role, but I think will ultimately get a second interview. And if you ask me, is the odds-on favorite to ultimately land the job, and that is Frank Reich. He is arguably the most well-known candidate that the Jets spoke to. He's had 2 stints as an NFL OC, 2 runs as head coach at the NFL level. Spent 2025 as Stanford's head coach. He led them to a 4-8 record, was actually their most wins since 2020. He is a perfect example, though, similar to Bevel, why experience should not be Aaron Glenn and the Jets' priority when they're searching for any coach, whether it be OC, DC, etc. And I think Glenn did a great job pivoting from that route when hiring his defensive coordinator earlier on in the offseason in Brian Duker. But similar to Bevel, why is Frank Reich on this list? His last 2 stints as an NFL at the NFL level, have ended in in-season firings. Colts head coach and play caller in 2022. He was fired after a 3-5-1 start where the offense was averaging under 15 points per game. And then with the Panthers in 2023, that was an unmitigated disaster. He went 1-10. He was fired after that start, and most of his staff was ultimately canned after that first year. And then when you just set aside look at the broader picture, set aside his recent struggles at the NFL level, there is no confidence that Reich is going to be able to develop a quarterback for the Jets. Bryce Young, under Reich's watch, had an historically bad rookie season just after winning the Heisman, and then 2 years later was in the playoffs under Dave Canales. And frankly, that shows that Bryce Young always had it in him, and he just wasn't coached right in year 1 by Frank Reich, and ultimately he paid the price going one and done there. His resume, and when you look at his recent body of work, like I just spoke about, it does not warrant a play calling job in 2026. So look, he's better than Bevel in my opinion. I would take him over Bevel, but man, he's not intriguing. He's not enticing. He's not someone that, if they hire him when we're doing the breaking news show, that I'm going to be through the roof about, talking about, yay, the Jets got Frank Reich. Again, none of these options are interesting. None of these options, in my opinion, are an upgrade over Tanner Engstrand. And then third finalist on this list is Greg Roman. He was the first reported candidate to earn a second interview for the role, and he was actually number one on the list of OC candidates that I had over at Jets X Factor, my most recent column. But that ranking is kind of less of a glowing review of Roman and more of a way of saying how unappealing overall this list is that I've been talking about, not only on this show, but all week long. 4 stints as an NFL OC, 53 years old, was just with the Chargers the past 2 seasons. And look, there is certainly reason for fans to be concerned if the Jets ultimately hire Roman or any of the 3 finalists. With the Chargers, Justin Herbert's production dipped significantly under his watch. Herbert averaged 47 passing yards, fewer per game with Roman than he did the seasons without him, and then 6 fewer passing touchdowns over a 17-game sample size. And a similar trend emerged in Baltimore, where Roman was before he went to the Chargers. He was the Ravens OC from 2019 to 2022. And Lamar Jackson's passing efficiency overall spiked once Roman was canned and Todd Monken was brought in. So there are concerns with Roman as it pertains to his ability to coordinate a passing offense at this point of his coaching career. But there's no doubt that he is one of the best run game designers in the NFL. Over his 4 years in Baltimore, the Ravens led the league in rushing yards per game, and then ultimately didn't come to fruition in LA with the Chargers, but that in large part was due to the amount of injuries that they had over the past few years. Over 20 different offensive line combinations this past season, losing Rashawn Slater before the season went underway, losing Joe Alt before week 10. It was a disaster there on the injury front. So overall, I think Roman is the best candidate on this list, evidenced by my ranking of him at number 1 overall. But again, that's less of a glowing review of him and more so like, damn, this is the list of candidates you're speaking to after firing Tanner Engstrand. But I say all that to kind of bring up this alternative universe that I floated around in a column yesterday over at JetX, and how the Jets could potentially take an interesting approach to filling this job, taking a more unique route. And I think it is realistic and honestly the most intriguing way the Jets can go. They could bring someone like Greg Roman in, who is one of the league's best run game designers, have him coordinate the run game, and then instead of giving him full control of the offense, you could pair him with one of the other 2 finalists in Bevel or Reich, who are better known for coordinating their passing attacks, and implement kind of a co-offensive coordinator structure. Again, in this scenario, Roman would be the one coordinating the run game, and then you'd have someone like Reich or Bevel working with the quarterbacks, coordinating the pass game. I think that feels more balanced and overall makes more sense than just handing one of those 3 guys the keys to the offense in full. Now, obviously, this strategy would hinge upon one of these 3 coaches being willing to settle for something less than an OC role, and frankly, these guys don't have any other options, so I don't see why not. Frank Reich has not received any other interest from around the NFL. Greg Roman has not interviewed for another offensive coordinator job, and same goes for Darrell Bevel. Again, at the end of the day, none of these options are as compelling as just bringing Engstrand back for a second year. And look, man, again, beggars can't be choosers, but at the same time, cheese. That's all I got to say to Aaron Glenn and his decision to move on from Tanner Engstrand, given the list of finalists that you're looking at for the Jets offensive coordinator job right now. So not pretty, not great, and not something that fans should be excited about, no matter who they hire. Even the co-OC structure that I think is the best route that the Jets could possibly elect to go, the most intriguing. There isn't someone who there isn't a plan that sticks out to me, and I'm excited about. I think OC is going to be an important hire, not only because they're going to be coordinating the entire offense after Glenn just decided to go one and done with an up-and-coming OC, but they're going to have to fill out a lot of the coaching staff. There are only 5 total coaches. As of now, there could be less. There are only 5 total coaches on Aaron Glenn's coaching staff that he initially hired last year, returning for year 2. It was 6 until their tight ends coach, Jeff Blasco, yesterday was poached by Todd Monken and the Cleveland Browns. So the 5 coaches currently expected to return for next year. Again, still subject to change. It's Chris Harris, the defensive passing game coordinator and defensive backs coach, Nick McKissick-Luke, the running backs coach, Sean Jefferson, their wide receivers coach, Steve Hayden, who did a tremendous job as the Jets offensive line coach next year, who we've still seen rumblings from some of the reporters that he could potentially be on the move. And then the other one, obviously, being Chris Banjo, the special teams coordinator. So it's insane. There's only 5 guys from his initial staff, as of now, returning for year 2 again, still subject to change. We could be talking in a few weeks, and there'd be only 3 on the list, and the list being Chris Banjo, the special teams coordinator, did a fantastic job in year 1, Chris Harris, and Nick McKissick-Luke, secondaries coach and the running backs coach. So, look, it really shows how not only how bad year 1 is, but Aaron Glenn's really incapability of structuring a coaching staff, right? Because this is someone who was hyped up to the Jets fan base as someone who has done all the stops, someone who has been everywhere from a scout to a defensive backs coach to a coordinator. And then the final stop of the journey for him was getting the Jets head coaching job. And we've heard him talk so much about this plan, the plan that he has cooking. Trust the process. Don't let go of the rope. That is a lot of the lip service, really, at the end of the day, that we've heard from Aaron Glenn. And you can't say that this was his plan. You can't say that his plan was to have to fire 7 assistants after the season ended. You can't say it was his plan to fire his defensive coordinator in season and then fire his OC 3 weeks after the regular season's conclusion. So I think Jet fans want to have hope. They've done everything they can to hold on to the rope, talking in Aaron Glenn terms here on the show. But at the end of the day, there is no rope really for Jets fans to hold on to as long as Aaron Glenn is the head coach of this team and as long as his record stays at 3-14. I don't know how fans have hope. I don't know how fans are looking forward to the future with Glenn. You could talk about the assets that the Jets have and there being room for excitement regarding that, having 5 first-round selections over the next 2 years, having 4 picks in the top 45. You could talk about the assets. You could talk about the over $85 million in cap space this offseason, sure. But it all roots back to the decision makers and Glenn being at the forefront of those concerns. Do you trust Aaron Glenn to take a quarterback and not only take the right one, but you look at how many coaches he's fired this past offseason. Do you trust him to have a development plan in place for that quarterback to have success right away? I'll tell you right now, I sure as hell do not. I do not. He's not only still looking for an offensive coordinator, but that OC will need to hire a passing game coordinator and a quarterback's coach. OC, QB's coach, PGC. Those are 3 coaches who play such a key role in a quarterback's development at the NFL level. And right now, as we sit here on February 2nd, the Jets do not have an offensive coordinator employed. The Jets do not have a quarterback's coach employed. And they do not have a pass game coordinator employed. This team is a disaster. They hired their defensive coordinator less than a week ago. Half their coaching staff is fully vacant in February. It's an absolute mess. It's a dumpster fire. That is the New York Jets. So there isn't much rope for fans to hold on to. And I think that rope is going to get even shorter if we see a tweet from Connor Hughes in 2 days saying that the Jets hire Darrell Bevell as their OC, or the Jets hire Frank Reich as their offensive coordinator. Again, rooting back to the OC talk, I think at the end of the day, fans should be rooting for the co-OC type structure that I just spoke about, where it's Roman and one of Reich or Bevell, or they just give the reins to Roman. I think the most intriguing one, again, is the co-OC structure. Giving the full reins to Roman, again, would not be excited about it, but I feel more confident than giving Darrell Bevell, who hasn't had offensive success in a near decade, or given Frank Reich, who just bottomed out in Carolina and his last 2 NFL stints ended in season firings, the keys to this offense and the keys to developing a young quarterback. It's just, where do you go from here? And man, it all comes back to, why the hell did you fire Tanner Engstrand, who did his job, who was scheming receivers open? Give him a chance with a quarterback. He wasn't great. He wasn't perfect. I'm not arguing that. Nobody's arguing that. What I'm arguing, though, is that he is better than both of the finalists for the role, and essentially the third one in Frank Reich. Thank you all for joining us right here on a Monday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. As always, I'm your host, Connor Long. Thank you all for tuning in again. Hit like, hit subscribe, Free way to help us grow right here on the channel. Questions, comments, thoughts. Throw all those in the chat. We are going to get to those. Again, questions, comments, thoughts. Throw those in the chat for us to get to. Call into the show with the pin link at the top of the video description down below. Shout out to everyone watching us live right here on the show. If you haven't already, go ahead and go follow me over on Twitter at Connor_long15. Excuse me. And then if you're watching on Twitter, but you haven't subscribed to us over on YouTube, be sure to go ahead and do that at NY Flight Jets Talk over on YouTube. Got 116 of you guys watching us live. Again, hit like, hit subscribe. Goes a long way to helping us grow right here on the channel. Appreciate you all and appreciate all of your support. Still supporting the show despite a miserable 3-14 season. Sitting in February, there's not a ton to talk about really in the world that's intriguing other than miserable coaching news. So Jets fans are the best fans, and thank you all for tuning in right here on the program. Shout out to Tank for Ty, who went ahead and gifted a membership. Thank you so much, John. Appreciate your support as always. Thank you for tuning in on the show. And then, of course, thank you for dropping a gifted membership. Jay says, with Glenn in the head coach role, I do not expect anything positive from this team in 2026. Engstrand got a job in 5 minutes. Mike LaFleur is now head coach, and Robert Saleh is now a head coach. Jeff Ulbrich was retained. Yeah, LaFleur over to the Arizona Cardinals as their head coach, and then Saleh obviously was hired a few weeks ago in Tennessee as their HC. So the Jets play both the Titans and the Cardinals this season, so that's going to be fun. Engstrand, like you mentioned, got a job in 5 minutes under Kevin Stefanski, one of the best offensive minds in the NFL, as the Falcons' pass game coordinator. So, look, it's rough to see all these other guys get promotions. Like Mike LaFleur was pretty much made a scapegoat, just like I think Engstrand was, and he's a head coach just a few years later after revitalizing his career in a way as a non-play calling OC under Sean McVay. Imagine if the Jets lose to Mike LaFleur this year. Imagine if the Jets lose to Robert Saleh. The narratives that we're gonna have to hear, and there's a chance that happens. Like, there's a strong chance that happens. I think the Jets are a team, depending on how they allocate these resources this offseason, we could be having the same conversation next year, talking about another miserable season where there were officially no excuses because Glenn had all these picks, Glenn had all this cap space, and he effed it up. Or we're talking about a team that took a huge stride forward, took a shot on a quarterback in round 2 or 3. The Jets think they have their Tyler Shuck. They don't need to go all in on a QB high in next year's draft. And like Glenn gives us some promise, and he goes into year 3 without being on the hot seat. Like the Jets sign a Mitch Trubisky or a Malik Willis in free agency, draft a Garrett Nussmeier or Trinidad Chambliss, and you finish the year with 7 or promising 7 or 8 win season. Show some promise down the stretch. Close out the season on a high note. Like that I think is what Jet fans should be looking for next year. And I'm with all of you. I think that is far-fetched at the end of the day. I don't know how anyone can look at last year and say that is within reach. Now the Jets are close to obtaining that. Again, the resources are right on the table for the Jets, but it's easier said than done. We've been through this song and dance before. Are Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji able to properly allocate these resources? That is the question lurking in every Jets fan's mind, and rightfully so, because look, if the Jets take a quarterback high in this year, which I don't see, or whether they take it this year in 2027, if they get that pick wrong, that could set this organization back another 4 seasons. So this offseason, next offseason are huge. 5 first-round picks over the next 2 years, and one of those is going to go to a quarterback. I can tell you that right now. One of those will go to a quarterback. Jay says, why are the Jets not speaking to Joe Lombardi? Lombardi's an interesting one, right, Jay? Because he was a non-play calling OC over the past few years in Denver, but we kind of heard his name circulating around the Jets OC search last offseason. He obviously has the connection to Glenn from their time in New Orleans. Lombardi to me is no different than Frank Reich, no different than Darrell Bevel. I would say a downgrade compared to Greg Roman. So, sure, why didn't the Jets interview him? That was a little surprising to me as well. But at the same time, I don't think he is a huge upgrade over a Frank Reich or a Darrell Bevel, and I think he is a downgrade compared to Greg Roman. Smash the like button. Hit subscribe. I'm Connor Long right here with you guys on a Monday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Going to be hitting you guys with another show tomorrow. Going to try to do as much content as we can right here on the channel. We'll have a guest joining us probably on the show tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Again, if you haven't already, hit like, hit subscribe. Those are the free ways to support us and what we are doing right here on the channel. Let's go over to the phone lines. First up here on today's show is Kyle Clifton. Kyle, how you doing, man?
Good, Connor. You've got a lot of gifts. You've got a lot of ambition. You've got a lot of intelligence.
I appreciate it, man.
You've got a lot of direction, ability. You also apparently have a gift for hyperbole. I saw the thumbnail. Awful situation. You ain't kidding.
I appreciate it. Yeah, dude. It's not great.
Yeah, of course, Tanner Angstrand got a job in 5 minutes. Our head coach is a buffoon. He has no idea what's going on. That's the guy you keep. That's the guy you let grow into the role. The guy who hasn't done it before that's shown you something. Yep. Not the guy who's the game has passed you by, and you were just looking to have someone with head coaching experience around, right? So, it's not surprising that the guys that are getting these jobs are the LaFleurs and the Kubiaks. We should have gotten our own. We could have easily gotten our own. I think this job would have been appealing if they
would have.
Yeah, I think it was 9 picks in the first 2 days over these next 2 years. If you got rid of Glenn, who wouldn't want that with all this capital?
Over $85 million in cap space this year. Like,
right.
Your pick of a quarterback, it would have been an attractive job.
And by the way, a GM who, from what we're hearing, is pretty well respected. If they decide to keep Muji, so that's why if you went and you got a veteran guy, if you got a Harbaugh, or if you bring in Tomlin next year, they're going to want their own personnel guy that they work with, someone that they feel comfortable with. This was the time to move on from Glenn, and of course, Woody blew it.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. And when you talk about the OC candidates and them being so much less appealing than Engstrand, which I spoke about earlier on in the show, and you just mentioned, I'm looking through this list when I was writing this article ranking them. Lunda Wells, the highest ranking position he's had as a coach is coaching tight ends. He's never been a run game coordinator before, never been a pass game coordinator. Then I look at Darrell Bevel, who we spoke about ad nauseum throughout the show, hasn't had NFL success in over a decade. Both the Frank Reich stints have last 2 NFL stints have ended in in-season firing. The last one is the Panthers head coach was disastrous after a 1-10 start. Then like Ronald Curry, for example, who was the Bills quarterbacks coach for the past 2 years. He's one of the more intriguing ones to me. But at the same time, I look at him and I just see like a Walmart version of Engstrand. Like the Jets had an upgrade compared to him and Engstrand. And same goes for Greg Roman, who's also in that retread category with a Bevel and Reich, the 2 other finalists. So look, at the end of the day, none of these alternatives are better than keeping Engstrand.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to staggering to 5 wins. They're going to probably, they have some good coaches on the staff. I could see them very easily expanding Steve Hyden's role to include the tight ends now that this other guy's going out the door. But we're going to be getting everybody's last choice to fill these key roles. We don't have any chance to get a quarterback this year. The guy is set up for failure, right? And we don't have an owner that has the patience to go through 2, 3, and 14 seasons, no matter how close he is to Aaron Glenn. So, I hope he doesn't have the patience to go through.
Yeah.
The owner is always been a problem, but it's really showing itself right now.
Yeah, and the issue, in my opinion, Kyle, is that good coaching can overcome bad ownership. If you ask me, look at what just happened in Carolina. David Tepper, you can make a case, is a worse owner than Woody Johnson. And I know to Jet fans on the surface that sounds crazy, but I'm telling you right now, if the NFLPA did a poll tomorrow, ranking the worst owners, Tepper would be right up there with Woody.
Of course.
He would be right in that conversation. The Panthers were just in the playoffs. They got the right coach who was able to come in and develop a quarterback, and that coach happened to be a young, up-and-coming offensive mind in Dave Canales, and they have their head coach of the future there. And the Jets just seem to be stuck in this never-ending cycle in a way where they are caught in the past. They're caught in the Rex Ryan era. It's evidenced by their hire of Glenn. And Glenn is stuck in that era himself, hiring Steve Wilkes last offseason, giving Wink Martindale legitimate consideration this past year, and then the OC candidates. So, look, the Jets are caught in a different era. I think that's the best way to put
that's the key part of what the owner does, right? He has to recognize the era of footbal that you're in and hire the right guys. And during the period 15 years ago, he did that with Rex and Tannenbaum. Tannenbaum was a competent executive. Whatever you think about his lack of scouting chops. And then, Rex is obviously a good football man. So, we need somebody who is going to innovate that side of the ball with the way the rules are now. And it's that easy. I appreciate your time, Connor.
Of course. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate the call. Great stuff from you, as always, my friend. And look, I love the rant, love the passion. And you're right, man. I'm in full agreement with what you're saying. The Jets are stuck in a different era. They're playing a different game of football. Different coaches, with different personnel, with different everything. And that roots back to the initial decision that Aaron Glenn made last offseason to bring in Mike Tannenbaum, someone who has not been an NFL GM for quite some time, who Woody Johnson himself fired, but brought back in to lead this search for a new head coach and GM. That was confusing to begin with. His consulting company, the 33rd Team. And if you look back, I pulled up the tweet from Rich Cimini the other day of Tannenbaum talking a year ago before they hired Glenn and Mushi about the process, pulling league-wide trends from 30 years ago, putting an emphasis on leadership over X's and O's acumen. The Jets are stuck in a different game. The Jets are in a different era. And it all roots back to their decision, in my opinion, Woody Johnson's decision, fully himself, to bring in Mike Tannenbaum to lead this search for a new head coach and GM. And at the end of the day, a flawed process leads to a flawed result. And I think that's the concern as to where the Jets are right now. Thank you all for tuning in right here on NY Flight Jets Talk. Hit like, hit subscribe. I'm Connor Long. It was great spending the past half hour going back and forth with you guys. Stay tuned. We got a show coming tomorrow. Should have a fun guest set up for tomorrow's show. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Some point in the evening, probably around this time frame, maybe a little later. Sorry, guys, been tinkering with the time a little bit earlier has been better for my personal schedule. So I'll see if we can try to get into rhythm here moving forward. But nevertheless, thank you all for joining us. Hit like, hit subscribe, stay tuned. Appreciate you all. Have a great rest of your night, everyone. I'm Connor Long, right here on NY Flight Jets Talk, saying, let's go Jets, baby. No matter how bad it gets, we'll be here covering the team all year round on NY Flight Jets Talk. Peace out, folks.